look at how we solve it. So Christie's Cat Emporium is currently unlevered with an 8% cost of capital and expected annual EBIT of $125,000 forever. All firms face a 30% corporate tax rate, and Christie's cost of debt will be 4.38% if she chooses to issue debt. Part A starts out nice and simple by saying, what is the current value of Christie's Cat Emporium? And to solve this, we simply refer to the formulas that are included in the booklet as well as in your course notes or the textbook. And we see we have this formula where the value of the unlevered firm can be determined as a function of its earnings before interest and tax, its corporate tax rate, and its unlevered cost of equity. Of course, we use the unlevered cost of equity because the firm is unlevered. So we're matching apples to apples, oranges to oranges, as we always do here in corporate finance. So to solve this, we basically just plug in the values that are known. We see that EBIT is $125,000 from the information in the question. Multiplying that by 1 minus the 30% tax rate. And then all of that goes over top of R0, the unlevered cost of equity, which is 8% or 0.08. And we hit our calculators for a second, we crunch that out, and we find very quickly that the unlevered firm value is $1,093,750. So that's part A. And now we move on to part B, where we add a little bit more structure to this problem and see what else is going on. So to begin, part B says if the tax rates on interest income and dividends are both zero, that is to say, TS, the tax on equity, equals to TB, the tax on payments to debt, and they are both equal to zero, then should Christie add debt to the capital structure? So once again, in the interest of time and making your lives a little bit easier, I have included the relevant formula in the booklet here. And so we see the value of the levered firm. It starts out, as is so often the case, or as was the case in Chapter 16, starts out as being equal to the value of the unlevered firm. We multiply all of that by this big term in the square brackets here, which includes TC, the corporate tax rate, TS, the tax rate on distributions to equity holders, and finally, of course, TB, the tax rate to those who are receiving payments from their debt holdings. Finally, we multiply the whole thing by the level of debt, which is represented by the letter B that we're used to because that's how it's been all semester as well as last term in the intro course. So what do we want to do here? I believe the simplest way to solve this is to simply ask ourselves, is the value of the levered firm going to be greater than the value of the unlevered firm if the level of debt B is greater than zero? And we simply ask ourselves this question, and if the answer is yes, well, then do it. And it's really just as simple as that. So all we have to do is plug some values into this formula, and we will determine whether the levered firm's value has increased relative to the value of the unlevered firm. If so, then yes, we should add some debt to the capital structure for Christie's Cat Emporium. So away we go. Let's plug the values in. VL is equal to VU to begin with, plus we'll set up this big square bracket, and we will multiply its contents by B, the level of debt. And we've got 1 minus, we set up this fractional term. So 1 minus the corporate tax rate, which was given as 30%. So we say 1 minus 0.3. Now, because TS and TB are both 0, 1 minus TS becomes 1 minus 0, which is simply 1. And down here in the denominator, 1 minus TB is 1 minus 0. So that is, again, simply equal to 1. And so we basically have everything that we need there. We just do a little bit of simple math, and we'll find that VL is equal to VU plus 0.3 times B. Now, we know that B has to be positive, because if we add debt to the capital structure, we're taking B, which was equal to 0 when there was no debt, and we're making it some positive number. Could be $1,000, could be $50,000, whatever the number is, doesn't really matter. What's important is that we know that this value of B right here has to be a positive number. And so we can simply look at this expression that we have generated in its entirety, and we can ask ourselves, is VL going to be greater than VU? Well, VU will be positive. The value of the firm was established in the previous part of the question as 1 million and change. And what this result tells us right here is that for every dollar of debt that I add to Christie's capital structure, we can increase the value of the levered firm by $0.3, or in other words, 30 cents. And so because there is a positive relationship between the level of debt and the value of the levered firm, it stands to reason that yes, indeed, VL will be greater than VU if we add any debt to the capital structure, or again, if B is equal to 0. And so taking all of this in its entirety, we can simply argue that, yes, hooray, we should add some debt to the capital structure. And if we do so, the value of the levered firm will be greater than the value of the unlevered firm. And that's what we want to do as corporate managers, of course, is to always maximize the value of the firm. We can maximize the value, or we can at least increase the value of the firm by adding debt. Therefore, yes, we should do it. So that is how we take care of part B. Now we can scroll up to part C and take a look at this problem and see what it has to offer. So part C, Christie has a 100% dividend payout ratio. If the tax rate on interest income is 38% and the tax rate on dividends is 10%, is it now in Christie's best interest to recapitalize by issuing $200,000 specifically of debt? And so we can see here again, I'm using the same approach with the same formula simply because it works, and I believe this to be the simplest, easiest way to solve these problems. And why would you ever want to do something in a more complicated manner if you do not need to? So we can start working through this problem by recognizing TB, the tax rate on interest income, is 38%. So TB is 38%. We have to make sure that we get all of our tax rates lined up correctly, that we know which one is which. Tax rate on dividends is 10%. So that's like saying TS is 10% because dividends are a payment to equity holders. Therefore, we can use TS, the tax on equity, to describe the tax that shareholders would pay on those distributions. Finally, we're saying B is specifically $200,000 in this instance. So we have a specific value of debt in this case. And we're following the standard assumption from the Modigliani-Miller world that the firm is following a 100% payout ratio. Don't worry about if there's, will there be a question like this where it's only an 80% or 70% payout ratio, some other number? No, not likely. This is just one of the basic assumptions that goes on in the Modigliani and Miller world. So once again, all we have to do is work with this formula, plug in the values that are known, and we can move on to the next problem after that. So VL is equal to VU. We calculated initially that VU, when the firm was unlevered up in part A, we decided that the firm had a value of $1,093,750. Now we add to that the term in brackets, so it's 1 minus, and we get all of these expressions in order with the various tax rates. And so one of the most important parts here, of course, is just making sure that you have the right tax rate being plugged into the right spot. So always take that extra second or two to make sure that you know which tax rate is which. Corporate tax rate from the initial part of the question, still 30%. TS, the tax on equity distributions, we are told is 10%, so we plug in a 1 minus 0.1. Finally, down here in the denominator, TB is 38%, the tax on interest income. Remember, of course, interest is paid to bondholders. Bondholders are considered to be debt. And so TB, as the tax on debt, is thus 38%. And finally, big B here at the end, $200,000 is the level of debt that is under consideration for being added to the capital structure. We have one expression, one unknown on the left side, a whole lot of numbers on the right side. So we simply pull out our calculator machines, plug and play, and you will find, if you do that correctly, that the value of the levered firm will be $1,090,524.19. Now the problem here, of course, we can see is this is less than VU, which was equal in part A to $1,093,750. And so by adding debt to the capital structure in this instance, we can see that in fact the value of the firm has declined. So there is a decline in firm value. And so that's basically like saying this is a negative NPV project in a sense, if you were to use capital budgeting language. And of course, we do not want to do anything that causes the firm's value to decline. Therefore, that, my friends, is a big no, no, no to adding debt to the capital structure. And so that brings us to the end of this question in Chapter 17. I hope that worked out well for you. As always, if there are any questions, you can contact me at qsbfinance@gmail.com, and we can get you sorted out with anything that you might need. So thank you very much, and I hope this works well for you. Take care.